So my name is Paige, and I am something called a Systems Integration Manager at Universal Studios in Orlando, Florida. A system integration manager probably doesn't mean much to most people. Essentially what my job is to talk to all the people working together on a project, usually a ride in this case, a theme park ride. And I talk to the creative designers and the other engineers working on the project and all the other companies that come together to make that project a reality. And I make sure that they're all on the same page and that we're all working towards making the same awesome attraction for our guests. So the STEM pieces that I use the most during my job are the technology piece and engineering. So I went to school to become an engineer, so I use engineering a lot in what I do. But technology is also a very important piece of what we're trying to do. If you think about a typical ride vehicle these days or an animatronic figure that might bring a dinosaur to life, a lot of those are robots, so which very much fall into the technology spectrum. So there's all the hardware that's needed to make these rides come to life, but there's also a lot of programming that goes on behind the scenes, computers that are running all the time in order to make the attractions happen. So technology and engineering for me. Ooh, so I remember when I was like 7 or 8 years old, I went to Disney World in Florida for the first time. And I just remember looking around and thinking that everything was magical, everything was alive. And what's really interesting now is looking back on that, I now know that what brought that magic to life was lots of really cool engineers and designers working together to essentially make the magic real. So I remember when I was in like middle school and everyone's like, what do you want to do when you grow up? And I'm like, I don't know. I like making things. I like animals. Maybe I can make some cool animals. And then I remembered my time at Disney and I was like, oh, well, there were probably people that made all those things in the rides that I really liked. And so that's what kind of got me started looking down. What does it take to become a theme park engineer? What does it take to actually make that happen? And I'm lucky enough to be living the dream. And so I think that's a really interesting question. I'd love to share my path, but then some other paths that have gotten people to the same sort of place. So I took a maybe more, the route that I had laid out and maybe we call more traditional of like, I wanted to be an engineer, so I went and got a bachelor's in mechanical engineering. But then I've met a lot of people in my field that have very different backgrounds from me. Somebody that I worked with came from the video game industry, so they've come into the theme park industry. I met people that used to work on movies and television sets. I have some other people that came from the oil and gas industry. Somebody else who came from the aerospace industry who used to make airplanes and things like that. And before I got into the theme park industry, I actually worked in the automotive industry, so making cars. So there's a ton of different paths to get there. It's all about just knowing that that's kind of the place you want to go and either working on kind of the engineering skills that can get you there or the creative design skills that can get you there. Ooh. Highlights of the job. So I think one highlight for me of my role is when I am trying to solve a hard problem at one of our theme parks, I will often go and spend time at the ride that I'm investigating, and I'll stand often on the load and unload platform, essentially where guests get onto and off of the ride vehicles, the roller coaster, whatever kind of ride it is. And I get to see how the guests interact with our rides, and then even more exciting, how they feel when they get off the ride afterwards. And I absolutely love just watching people be super happy after they get off the ride. That just feels really rewarding to know I had a part in essentially bringing a smile to people's faces. Ooh, that's a good question. Let me think about that for a sec. So advice that I think I would give if you wanted to go into essentially theme park design or engineering, one thing that was just really helpful, I think, is that sense of creativity and collaboration. So when I'm working on a project, I certainly don't have all the answers myself. There's a lot of different people that come together in order to make something happen. And so things like working together on a school project or working together in a robotics setting, all those things are teaching you those collaboration skills in order to work with people that have different backgrounds and different skill sets than you to build something cohesive that will eventually go and perform a task or, in my case, make people happy. Ooh, okay. When I was a kid, before I figured out the whole theme park thing, I really liked animals. So my mom is a veterinary technician, works with vets, works with animals. And so I think there was definitely a moment in time where I thought I'd go down that path. But I don't handle blood very well. So as much as I'd like to cuddle and play with cats, I don't think I'd be a very good veterinarian. So I just try and make cool creatures instead now. Ooh, okay. My favorite video game is probably Kingdom Hearts, which you just heard my love of Disney. It's a very silly game that has a very incoherent plot, but it's very fun. You essentially get to go explore all the Disney worlds, and that's just neat to me.